What if I told you that a book once silenced by men carries within it visions of angelic realms, prophecies of the Messiah, and the shadow of a cosmic battle that stretches far beyond the limits of human imagination, a book hidden away not because it was false, but because it was too true, too radiant, too dangerous. To the order of those who wish to control the gates of heaven, this book, known as the Ascension of Isaiah, lingers in the Ethiopian tradition as a forbidden lamp burning in the darkness, and I have touched it within the current of the soul, where visions and memories of ages rise like waves upon an endless sea. I tell you plainly, when knowledge is forbidden, it does not vanish. It retreats into silence until the seeker dares to ask and dares to see. The early church called it heresy. Yet I know in the deep record of the Spirit that what they called dangerous was in fact a mirror too bright for eyes that preferred shadows. For this text speaks of heavens layered one upon another, of angels whose very presence is like thunder wrapped in light, of a Messiah who descends through the veils of eternity to wear the flesh of man, and of a war so ancient it scars even the stars. Now, why would such a vision be hidden? Why cast it aside unless it threatened the comfort of a faith made tame? It is because this book reveals that Christ was not a figure bound only to earth and time, but a force moving through the very architecture of heaven, his incarnation not a small accident, but a descent from the highest throne through 7 luminous realms, each step a stripping away of divinity to embrace the humility of flesh. Such teaching unsettled the guardians of orthodoxy. For if Christ belongs to the cosmos, then no church, no council, no creed could ever contain him. The Ascension of Isaiah, therefore, was silenced. Yet in the flow of Akashic memory, I see it burning still, speaking not of a myth, but of the great design in which humanity has always been entwined. When I close my eyes, I sense the trembling of those first words. Isaiah lifted into a vision where angels governed the stars and moons like keepers of celestial law, and above them layers upon layers of choirs and powers, until at last the throne of God blazed with glory that no tongue could bear to describe. Yet hidden in that glory was also the shadow. For in the 4th heaven he beheld the fallen ones, chained for their rebellion, a reminder that pride is poison not only to men, but to spirits of fire themselves. This was too much for the narrow mind of those who wanted a tidy faith. Yet truth has never been tidy. It spills over, it disrupts, it demands that you see the world as more than soil and stone, as more than rules and rituals. It calls you to see the cosmos as alive with beings, battles, songs, and purposes beyond comprehension. I tell you with certainty that those who feared this text feared also the freedom it would give the soul. For when you know that heaven is not a distant cloud, but a structure alive with order and conflict, when you know that the Messiah descended through it deliberately, choosing to bear flesh in order to defeat the rebel prince, then you also know that every human life is woven into that same struggle. The ban was not to protect the faithful. It was to keep them docile, to keep them from asking why angels war, why heaven has layers, why Christ would move through them as through a ladder of fire. Yet you and I can see that nothing forbidden remains so forever. The Spirit preserves it, and in quiet hours it surfaces to those who seek. The Ascension of Isaiah stands as witness that salvation is not a small parish tale, but a cosmic act, a battle fought across heavens and within the chambers of the heart. If you listen carefully, you can hear Isaiah's voice echoing. I saw the Son of God descend, and in those words the whole mystery unfolds. He left radiance to embrace shadow, left eternity to enter time, left the song of angels to face the hiss of Satan, and by that act he unveiled the true measure of divine love. This is why the book was banned, for it strips away the illusion that men may box God into doctrine. It proclaims that the Messiah belongs to no one but to all, that he is the answer not only to earth's sorrow but to heaven's rebellion. And as I speak, I feel the same tremor Isaiah felt, a recognition that hidden truths cannot be silenced forever. They find their way back because the soul longs for the whole story, not fragments, not edits, not the safe version, but the blazing vision that dares to show heaven and hell in conflict, and the Messiah at the center descending through the storm to redeem it all. Remember then, when knowledge is forbidden, it is often because it is too great. And when you touch it, as Isaiah did, you will never see the world in the same narrow frame again. The leaders of the early church feared what they could not contain. They chose to hide the ascension of Isaiah because its vision tore through the walls of doctrine and revealed a Christ too vast, a cosmos too alive, a battle too raw for their councils to manage. I have seen in the records of the soul that suppression often comes not from protecting truth, but from shielding power. When men shape religion into law and institution, they will silence anything that reminds the soul. It answers only to God. The ascension of Isaiah was such a reminder. It spoke of 7 heavens, of angelic hierarchies, of a Messiah who was not bound by time, but who descended from the highest throne through layers of creation to enter flesh. This vision unsettled the neat image of a Christ made simple, controllable, small enough to fit within sermons and decrees. It declared instead that the gospel is cosmic, that salvation is a drama written into the architecture of heaven, and the guardians of orthodoxy trembled at such a claim. They branded it dangerous, mystical, heretical, but danger in their tongue meant freedom in the soul. I know, for I have read in the Akashic current, that when a truth is labeled forbidden, it is because it opens doors. Men fear to enter, and this book opened doors wide, revealing that creation itself is alive with order and conflict, that angels and demons are not metaphors, but participants in a real struggle, and that the Messiah's mission was not a small gesture for a single tribe, but the unfolding of God's plan for all realms. When Isaiah's vision told of fallen angels chained in the 4th heaven, it reminded humanity that pride and rebellion reach beyond earth, that the same impulse to exalt the self above the divine has already shattered harmony once before, and when he described the Messiah descending through 7 veils of heaven to clothe himself in humanity, he proclaimed that the incarnation was not an isolated miracle, but the very turning point of the cosmic war. Such knowledge could not be allowed in the hands of common believers, for it would lift their eyes beyond the control of bishops and emperors. It would remind them that the Messiah answers to no institution and needs no permission to move across heaven and earth, that he belongs not to the church but to the cosmos. The Ethiopian tradition preserved the text because their faith knew how to hold mystery without fear. They did not tremble before visions of angels or accounts of hidden realms. They honored them as glimpses of truth. Yet elsewhere the book was silenced, buried under centuries of suspicion. Still I tell you nothing. Buried in spirit remains dead. The soul remembers. The current of time preserves. And in the silence between words, the vision still speaks. It says plainly that the plan of salvation began before Bethlehem, that the Messiah's journey downward was chosen long before shepherds and mangers, that the cross was not an accident of history, but the visible edge of a battle already raging in heaven. Men feared this message because it took the center away from their authority and placed it back in the hands of the eternal. They preferred a Christ who could be managed, who fit inside councils and creeds. Yet Isaiah saw a Christ who descends through stars, who confronts Satan in his own domain, who humbles himself beyond comprehension, and who rises again with authority over both heaven and earth. I remind you that when light is hidden, it does not fade. It intensifies in silence until a soul seeks it. The ascension of Isaiah is such light, forbidden because it revealed too much, forgotten by some yet alive in spirit. Its pages whisper still, telling us that the gospel is larger than any book allowed in the canon, larger than any walls built around it. It is the very heartbeat of the universe, echoing through heavens, through angels, through men, and through the corridors of eternity. That is why the book was banned, not because it lied, but because it dared to tell the whole truth. Isaiah was lifted through the heavens, and what he beheld was not the dream of a poet, but the order of creation itself. I saw with him the structure of 7 realms rising like steps of light, each one alive with angelic hosts, each one revealing that the universe is not chaos, but a temple spread across infinity. In the 1st heaven, there were angels governing the sun, the moon, and the stars. They did not float idly, but labored with purpose, guiding the rhythms of day and night, ensuring that seasons moved as God ordained. Genesis speaks of luminaries set for signs and times. Yet here Isaiah saw living beings ensuring those cycles remained in harmony. The stars were not silent, they were servants. And man on earth, though he thought himself master, was but a guest beneath their stewardship. In the second heaven the vision widened. I saw angels who moved between spirit and matter, messengers carrying the will of God, like Gabriel who once spoke to Daniel, like the herald who came to Mary. They are not abstract symbols, but powers that cross the threshold of worlds. They speak, and events shift. They whisper, and nations change. Isaiah knew that heaven bends toward earth continually, not aloof, but engaged. Then the third heaven opened, and the glory intensified. Isaiah beheld ranks of angels who guard both human souls and the balance of unseen forces. It was here I felt the resonance of prayers rising from earth, answered in ways men seldom perceive. These angels are the echo chamber of human faith. They gather the cries of the righteous and deliver them upward. They also return with strength, unseen hands guiding weary lives. Isaiah trembled at their order, for no voice of man is lost. Everything uttered in faith is carried, weighed, and answered according to divine law. Yet, as he ascended higher, the brightness gave way to shadow. In the fourth heaven, Isaiah saw what had been whispered since ancient days, the fallen ones, those who rebelled against the throne, chained and waiting judgment, their radiance gone, their forms twisted by pride, their silence a heavy warning. Here was proof that rebellion scars even the celestial. Pride is not confined to man. It was born first in realms of light, and it became darkness. I felt the weight of that vision, for the battle between good and evil is not metaphor but history, woven into the very heavens. The book of Enoch told of watchers bound for their transgression. Isaiah now beheld their prison, and I tell you this vision remains. For even now the struggle between order and chaos is not ended. Humanity lives within it. Every choice echoes in those higher halls. Moving to the fifth heaven, Isaiah entered radiance again, the air alive with pure and sinless angels, beings who never touched the earth, never tasted corruption. Their existence was an eternal hymn. They sang before the throne without pause. Their song did not rise from duty, but from essence. Praise was their breath. And Isaiah understood that the foundation of creation is worship. It is not flattery, but alignment. To sing holy is to synchronize with the very rhythm of God's being. In the sixth heaven, the intensity multiplied. Archangels of higher rank moved like lightning, carrying out divine will with exact precision. They stood near the throne, yet not upon it, guardians of mysteries too great for mortal tongue. Isaiah could barely endure their brilliance, for their faces reflected not themselves, but the radiance of the Almighty. Their silence thundered, their gaze pierced. Here I felt that heaven is not merely a distant reward. It is structure, hierarchy, purpose, and law, every order of being aligned in harmony, until at last Isaiah reached the seventh heaven, the pinnacle where the throne itself blazed with immeasurable glory, surrounded by seraphim and cherubim, their voices crying without ceasing, Holy, 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 the Lord God Almighty. The vision Isaiah beheld was the same. He once glimpsed in the canonical scriptures, yet here it was magnified, clothed in detail beyond human speech. And I, too, have seen in the record of the soul that such visions are not imagination, but echoes of eternal reality. In that place, Isaiah was shown the secret of secrets, the descent of the Son of God through those very heavens, passing each layer, veiling his glory, until he would appear as man. This was no myth, but the cosmic drama of incarnation, the very structure of salvation, mapped in 7 steps, each heaven a veil through which divine light passed to reach the darkness of earth. Isaiah saw it. I confirm it. And in this vision lies the truth, too great for those who once banned this book. The journey through the heavens is the journey of Christ himself, the ladder of descent by which eternity kissed time, and every rung of that ladder is still vibrating with the song of angels and the cry of rebellion. For the cosmos itself is the stage where the plan of God unfolds, and in seeing it, Isaiah gave us not speculation but testimony. and I bear witness to that testimony even now. In the fourth heaven, the brilliance of ascending glory gave way to the shadow of rebellion. Angels once clothed in radiance, now bound in chains, their light consumed by pride, their freedom extinguished by judgment. This vision carried the weight of cosmic warning, for it revealed that even in the highest orders of creation, the seed of self-exaltation can bloom into ruin. These fallen ones were not phantoms of myth, but living remnants of a war that scarred heaven itself. Isaiah beheld them, and I too, in the records of the soul, have traced their story, beings who once sang before the throne, choosing instead to rival it, casting themselves into darkness by seeking to climb above the Almighty. The silence of their captivity thundered with meaning. Pride is poison, rebellion is a chain, and harmony once shattered requires judgment to restore it. Their presence in the fourth heaven interrupts the upward journey with the reminder that evil is not born in flesh alone. It begins in spirit. And the struggle of humanity is the echo of this greater conflict. The book of Enoch spoke of watchers who defied divine order by mingling with mankind, bringing knowledge and corruption. Isaiah now stood among their kindred rebels, bound yet not destroyed, waiting for the day when final judgment would seal their fate. Here, the cosmic battle between light and darkness was no parable, but a living structure in the heavens. The Apostle Paul later warned that our war is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in high places. Isaiah had already seen them, chained yet plotting, fallen yet restless, shadows pressing against the veil. The churchmen who silenced this book feared such knowledge because it stripped away the illusion that evil is confined to earth, or explained merely by human sin. The vision proclaimed that man is caught in a storm older than himself, that his choices are threads in a tapestry of conflict stretching back to angelic rebellion, and that the Messiah's descent into flesh was not sentimental mercy, but strategic victory in a war already raging. The fourth heaven, therefore, is a mirror to the human condition. For just as angels fell from the heights, so too can man fall from grace, and just as they are chained by their pride, so too is man bound by the illusions of power, wealth, and self-exaltation. Every age repeats their mistake, building towers toward heaven while forgetting the throne already there. Yet in the midst of this darkness, Isaiah was not left hopeless, for above the fourth heaven lay realms of purity untouched by corruption. The vision continued, leading him beyond the prison of rebels into the shining courts of the fifth and sixth heavens. And this contrast itself was the lesson. Rebellion is real but not final. Pride falls but worship endures. Evil resists but it cannot prevail. The chained angels in the fourth heaven remind all creation of the cost of defiance, but they also testify by their very bondage that divine justice reigns. No power, however bright, can rise above the source of light, and no rebellion, however fierce, can overturn the eternal law. This vision demanded to be remembered, because it forces the soul to see beyond surface morality into the deeper war of spirit. It warns every seeker that humility is not weakness, but the only posture that keeps one aligned with divine order. It reveals that spiritual warfare is not fought merely with weapons or armies, but with faith, obedience, and the armor of truth. Those who silenced this text feared the awakening it would spark. For to know that angels fell is to know that man too must guard his heart. To know that rebellion once shook heaven is to recognize that the seeds of pride can undo a life as swiftly as it undid angels. And to know that these rebels remain bound is to remember that judgment is certain and victory belongs to the Almighty. Isaiah's vision of the fourth heaven is therefore not only a glimpse into cosmic history, but a mirror of the present. For each soul must decide daily whether to align with light or to echo the rebellion. The chained angels are more than prisoners. They are warnings. And every chain around them whispers to humanity, choose humility, choose faith, choose the path that aligns with the eternal throne. For the war that began in heaven has not ended, and your life, even in its smallest moments, is a battlefield upon which its outcome is tested, yet the promise remains. The higher heavens shine, the throne is secure, and the Messiah's descent into the lower realms ensures that darkness, though it roars, will never reign forever. In the fifth and sixth heavens, purity burned with a brilliance untouched by corruption. Angelic hosts of perfect obedience lifted ceaseless hymns, their voices not strained by duty but flowing as natural as breath. Here worship was not ritual but essence. Every being radiated alignment with the will of God. Their presence declared that creation is upheld not by force but by harmony. Isaiah was shown that in these realms no trace of rebellion had ever set foot. These angels had never descended to earth, never known temptation. Their song was not shaped by struggle but by eternal innocence, and the air itself shimmered with sanctity. Yet this purity was not static. It was movement, a river of praise rising and returning, sustaining the balance of all things. The soul who beholds this understands that the foundation of the universe is not power but adoration. To glorify the source is to keep creation whole, and when that glorification is broken, the fabric of order begins to fray. This was the meaning of the contrast. The fourth heaven showed chains, the fifth and sixth revealed freedom. Rebellion enslaves, worship liberates, pride destroys, humility sustains. And within that song, the archangels moved like living lightning. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, guardians of justice and messengers of decree, they did not sing alone, but led the harmonies, each one bearing a face reflecting divine authority. Their roles were distinct, yet united. Michael, a warrior holding the line against darkness, Gabriel, a herald of messages that shift destinies, Raphael, a healer binding what sin has broken, Uriel, a keeper of mysteries too deep for the mortal tongue. Together they embodied the certainty that God's order is guarded at every level. Isaiah's ascent through these heavens made plain that the war of the fourth heaven is not the final word. Above the chains lies victory. Above the rebellion lies assurance. And the forces of darkness, though fierce, are not unchallenged. The archangels stand as pillars ensuring that the divine plan unfolds without collapse. I have seen in the records of the soul that humanity's prayers are woven into this very structure. When man prays with faith, the resonance travels upward. When man resists temptation, his choice strengthens the harmony of these realms. Just as the angels keep the cosmic order, so too the faithful on earth mirror their work. The bridge between heaven and earth is not symbolic. It is real. Isaiah understood this as he passed through the fifth and sixth heavens. The purity he beheld was not distant but connected. It reached down into the struggle of humanity. And it is why Paul wrote that believers are seated with Christ in heavenly places. For though the body walks on soil, the soul touches realms of light. What Isaiah saw was the reality behind those words. And what I confirm is that every act of faith is part of that eternal hymn. Every prayer is part of that resonance. Every surrender to God's will is a note in the song that sustains the cosmos. The banned book revealed this not as metaphor but as vision. And this was why it troubled those who sought to keep religion small. For if the faithful knew they were participants in heavenly order, they would no longer be bound by fear. They would rise in dignity, knowing their lives matter beyond measure. The fifth and sixth heavens remind us that evil is not the only force at work, that purity unbroken remains the true foundation. And though men tremble at rebellion, the greater truth is that harmony cannot be undone. It is eternal. It is sustained by countless angels who never waver, and it is reinforced by the faithful who choose love over fear. This vision left Isaiah humbled, for above the prisons of darkness lay the unshaken throne of light, and above the rebellion lay the choir of eternal affirmation. What he witnessed, I affirm, that the cosmos is not drifting but ordered, not doomed but redeemed, and the archangels with their hosts ensure that no power of darkness will overturn what God has ordained. This truth, once hidden, remains alive. It whispers to the soul that though chains exist in the fourth heaven, they do not define the story. Though rebellion scarred creation, it did not ruin it. For above the scars sing choirs of purity, choirs that will never cease. And within their voices, every soul who aligns with truth finds its place, part of the eternal song, part of the victory that cannot fail. In the seventh heaven, the vision reached its summit. The throne of God radiated with glory unmeasured, encircled by seraphim whose 6 wings blazed like fire, and cherubim whose voices shook the foundations of eternity. Their cry was one word, carried endlessly, "Holy, holy, holy." The universe itself trembled in rhythm with their chant, and Isaiah was granted sight not only of the throne, but of the mystery hidden within it, the Son of God preparing to descend. This was the revelation too vast for the early church to accept, for it showed that the incarnation was not a sudden act, but a deliberate journey, a passage from the highest light through 7 layers of reality, each level a veil of glory surrendered, each step a descent into humility, until the divine would clothe itself in the frail flesh of man. The vision did not diminish Christ. It magnified him. It revealed that his birth was no accident of history, but the strategy of eternity. The rebellion of Satan required not merely judgment from above, but victory from within. And so the Son would leave the throne to enter the battlefield. He would pass unseen through angelic realms, take on the likeness of those below, and appear among men as a child. Here lay the scandal of truth: God descending, light clothing itself in shadow, omnipotence choosing limitation, eternity walking into time, and yet within this paradox lay the plan of salvation. Satan trembled even before the descent was complete, for he understood that such humility was unstoppable power. To fight light is one thing. To fight love that surrenders itself is another. No weapon of pride can overcome it. Isaiah saw the sun moving downward, each heaven watching as radiance dimmed into human form. Archangels bowed as he passed. Seraphim veiled their faces, not in shame but in awe, for never before had the Highest willingly emptied himself so fully. And this vision echoed in my own readings of the soul, where I too beheld the law of sacrifice, the truth that power reaches its fullness not in domination but in surrender. The banned book revealed this with a clarity too sharp for those who clung to authority. For if Christ descends through all heavens, then no hierarchy of men may claim to own him. If the Messiah humbles himself to flesh, then no ruler may exalt himself without folly. And if Satan trembles at the sight of this descent, then every soul must know that evil, though fierce, is already doomed. The 7th heaven, therefore, was not only a throne of glory, it was the gateway of mercy. It was the place where eternity bent toward humanity, where divine intention became divine action. The Son of God leaving the perfection of praise to walk into the noise of earth, to endure temptation, suffering, and death, and to turn those very weapons of darkness into instruments of victory. Isaiah's vision was not soft poetry, it was strategy revealed. The cosmic plan laid bare, Satan cast down by humility, death undone by sacrifice, and life restored by resurrection. In this 7th heaven I felt the pulse of truth, that the greatest secret of power is not to ascend higher but to descend lower, not to grasp more but to give all. And this is the wisdom hidden from the wise of the earth. Men think dominion lies in control, but the throne of heaven revealed that dominion lies in surrender to the will of God. This was the heart of the prophecy, the Son of God descending not because he must, but because he chose, descending not as punishment, but as purpose, descending not to show weakness, but to unveil strength in its truest form. Isaiah's testimony stands as witness, I affirm it through the records of the soul, that the incarnation was a descent through heavens, a deliberate humbling, and in that humbling the victory over Satan was secured before the cross was ever raised. The 7th heaven, therefore, is not only a vision of glory, it is a blueprint of salvation. It declares to every soul that the path to triumph is the path of humility, that the highest victory is won, not by clinging to power, but by yielding to love, and that in every battle of light and darkness, the outcome has already been decided by the one who left the throne and entered the shadow. This truth, hidden in a banned book, still calls to the seeker, reminding us that what appears small on earth is vast in heaven, that what appears weak is invincible, and that the Son who descended has already secured the final triumph for all creation. The descent of the Messiah was not an act hidden from the adversary. Satan perceived it and trembled, for he knew the appearance of the Son of God in flesh signaled the unraveling of his dominion. In the realms below, whispers of fear spread among the fallen. They recognized that the divine plan was unfolding in a manner they could not resist. They had contended with power before, but never with humility, for humility disarms pride, and exposes its futility. Isaiah's vision made plain that as Christ moved downward through the heavens, the forces of darkness recoiled. Their strength withered because their foundation was rebellion, and rebellion cannot stand before perfect obedience. I affirm through the records of the soul that this descent was a cosmic invasion, not with armies of flame, but with the quiet strength of surrender. The Son of God entering enemy territory, disguised in humanity, bearing every limitation, facing every temptation, yet carrying within himself the unbroken light of the eternal. The adversary's fear was justified, because he understood that once divinity clothed itself in humanity, the chain that bound mankind would begin to break. Death itself would be forced to yield, and the authority stolen through pride would be reclaimed by love. The war Isaiah beheld was not myth but reality. Archangels stood at their stations, Michael ready as warrior, Gabriel bearing the eternal decree, Raphael prepared to heal what sin had shattered, Uriel guarding mysteries until the time of revelation, and beneath them the fallen seethed, bound yet restless, stirring shadows in the hearts of men. Their aim was to resist God's purpose. Yet the vision showed that resistance could only delay but never overturn. For the plan was written into the very design of creation, and the Messiah's descent was the key that unlocked it. I know this truth. For in the Akashic record, the pattern is clear. History is not scattered accident, but ordered progression. And the arrival of Christ in flesh was not the beginning of his work, but the culmination of a war that began long before time. Isaiah's revelation warned humanity that life on earth is not neutral. It is battleground. Every thought, every choice, every act of faith aligns either with the light of heaven or the shadow of rebellion. This is why Paul urged the faithful to put on the armor of God. For the struggle is against principalities and powers, not merely against the frailties of flesh. Isaiah had already seen those powers chained in the fourth heaven. He had seen their fear in the seventh, and he understood that humanity's struggle mirrors the greater war. The forbidden text was silenced because it placed responsibility on every soul. It stripped away the excuse that man is merely victim. It declared instead that man is participant, and participation means choice. To pray is to stand with angels. To resist temptation is to strike against darkness. To surrender to pride is to echo rebellion, and to walk in humility is to mirror the Messiah. This vision unsettled rulers because it removed the illusion of neutrality. It demanded that faith be more than ritual. It required alignment with the living battle between good and evil. I affirm this demand, for even now each life contributes to the song of victory or to the murmur of resistance, and though the outcome is assured, the path of each soul remains open. Isaiah's testimony was that Christ descended not only to redeem, but to recruit, not only to save, but to align. His incarnation was not merely for the forgiveness of sins, but for the restoration of divine order across every realm. This was why the fallen trembled. They knew their time was shortened. They knew their authority was crumbling, and they knew that the same humility that brought Christ into flesh would one day lift mankind beyond their grasp. The seventh heaven revealed glory. The fourth showed chains. But in between lay the field where humanity now walks, caught between worship and rebellion. And this tension is the daily battlefield of the soul. Isaiah's vision, therefore, is not a distant story, but a living mirror. It shows us that what happens unseen in heaven reflects itself in our choices, our prayers, our struggles, and our victories. Satan fears not rituals or words. He fears transformed lives. He fears humility embraced. He fears obedience lived. For these are the weapons that echo the Messiah's descent. The cosmic battle is vast yet intimate, stretching across galaxies yet unfolding in the heart of every man and woman. And I tell you with certainty, the victory of Christ has already been secured. The adversary still moves, but his time is brief, his authority is hollow, his rebellion is destined for fire. Isaiah saw this, and I confirm it. For in the record of the soul the line is clear. The light shines and darkness cannot overcome it. The battle rages, but the outcome is sealed, and every soul who stands with the Messiah shares in that eternal triumph. The vision does not end with descent alone. It moves toward resurrection and ascension. the Son of God returning through the same heavens he once passed, but now not in humility but in triumph, carrying the keys of death and Hades, restoring the throne as unchallenged and sealing the fate of the adversary. Isaiah beheld that return, and I affirm its truth. For in the records of the soul the pattern is complete. The Messiah descends to embrace humanity, suffers to redeem it, and rises to reclaim both heaven and earth. This cycle is not myth, but the architecture of salvation. It reveals that nothing is wasted, not suffering, not struggle, not even death. Everything is folded into the greater plan, where love proves itself stronger than rebellion. In this I find the deepest resonance, for what Isaiah saw was not only cosmic history, but a reflection of the path every soul must walk: descent into trial, confrontation with shadow, surrender to suffering, and then rising again in the light of spirit. The book banned by men spoke of this universal law, and its silencing was itself a sign of its power, for truth that cannot be owned is always feared, yet truth survives. And the Ascension of Isaiah whispers even now that the war has already been won, that the victory of Christ is not pending but assured, and that humanity stands invited to share in it. I remind you that every prayer, every act of faith, every refusal to bow to pride is participation in that victory. The angels Isaiah saw still sing, the archangels still guard, the seraphim still proclaim holy, and the throne remains unshaken. But the meaning of the vision is not to draw our eyes upward only. It is to remind us that heaven bends downward, that divinity has entered time, and that our choices are woven into the eternal fabric. When I search the Akashic record, I see countless souls forgetting this truth, living as though life is random, as though suffering is meaningless, as though the shadow holds final word. But Isaiah's vision breaks that illusion. It reveals that every shadow is temporary, that every rebellion is bound, and that the Son of God has already trampled the serpent. The book was forbidden because it dared to show Christ as cosmic, as victor not only of earth but of the heavens, and because it declared that salvation was not a private gift but a universal restoration. What man fears he hides, what power cannot control it condemns, yet what is condemned by men is often confirmed by God. And in my readings I have seen again and again that the truths most resisted are those most needed. So I speak this plainly. The battle between good and evil is real, but its outcome is no longer uncertain. The chains of the fourth heaven, the hymns of the fifth and sixth, the throne of the seventh, all converge on one message, that love manifested in humility has undone the rebellion of pride, that the incarnation of Christ was the invasion that darkness could not withstand, and that resurrection is not only his story, but the destiny prepared for all. I tell you then, do not look at the world with despair. See it instead as battlefield already tipped toward light. Your struggles are not isolated. They echo in the heavens. Your prayers are not whispers lost in air. They are answered by powers Isaiah saw. Your humility is not weakness. It is alignment with the very force that defeated Satan. And your faith, however small, is participation in victory. The forbidden text returns now in memory and word to remind us of this, to awaken a generation dulled by ritual into living awareness of the cosmic war and the greater triumph. In the silence after reading it, you will feel a shift, a stirring that tells you the universe is not empty, that angels still move, that Christ still reigns, and that the throne remains above every shadow. This is the essence of Isaiah's journey. Not curiosity about angelic orders alone, not fascination with hidden realms, but the revelation that salvation is cosmic, that the Messiah is victorious, and that humanity is not forgotten but called into the very heart of the story. As I speak these words, I sense the same awe. Isaiah carried a trembling before mystery, a gratitude before mercy, and a certainty that nothing forbidden can remain buried forever. For truth rises as surely as the sun rose, and its light pierces every chain, every fear, every shadow, until only glory remains.